Hello everyone and welcome to our sessions on Pandas library. So in the previous sessions we learned about what is our structured data types, what is our unstructured data type, and how to utilize all those different kinds of data types and where these data types are being generated and how effectively we can use it in our programs, and what is the difference between structured and unstructured data types, and in case of structured data types where we can store the data and what data formats can we store the data. We all saw this kind of particular examples. So then we understood the most of the data that we'll be storing will be in CSV format. And why CSV format is because it has the ability to be platform independent. So your Microsoft Excel works only on Windows and it can't work on other operating systems. Likewise, our CSV files can work in any operating system, so there is no constraint in the operating system properties, and we have these files that can be opened in any software. You can have a text editor, you can have a text pad, notepad or anything, so you can open it and you can see the data. And to store large amounts of data, that is like millions of rows of data, it is very simple and easy to store it in formats such as CSV, and it takes minimum amount of data. So a data which has 10 million or 20 million data, like rows and columns, can just be few MBs in CSV. So that is very like an advantage fact that is there in the CSV file format. So okay, we are storing the data in CSV format, but why should we learn this Pandas library? So why should we learn this Pandas library is, so Pandas is an abbreviation for your like Python data analytics and storage tool. So this Python data analytics and storage tool helps you to get data as well as store data in large format. So one better example I would take is, so if you want to store like age of or nothing but a database or a data set of thousands of people whose age you are trying to store. So what you will try to do is you will initialize a list. So then you will take inputs from Python programming, so you can manually enter the ages. So the main problem is to store such a large amount of data, you can't use your conventional lists or conventional tuples, dictionaries or integers. So you need to store it in some place whenever you need, you can import those files and take the information as well as process them and close the files. So you don't need to use all the things in your Python program. So you can store it in external files like CSV format. In order to take in those data, in order to retrieve the data, we need this Pandas library. So Pandas library is a very helpful library for you to read data from other files or nothing but file formats like CSV, as well as create some data frame. So what is data frame is nothing but a collection of data that are stored as a single entity. So we have data frames in Pandas which will help us store data in different of different types in a single entity. So that is what your Pandas libraries is doing. So let us move on to the hands-on session and see how Pandas is actually helping us do all those particular tasks. Okay, so we are back in our Python terminal. So you can open a new Python like programming file or an empty file. So the first thing that we will try to do is we will try to work with our Pandas library. So the first step is nothing but importing the library. So I told you how to import a library. It is pretty simple. You need to use the keyword called as import. So import keyword will import any other, any other programming library that you want to use in Python. So one thing is to import any data or to use any data, what we need to do is pretty simple. So we need to use this import keyword and we need to import Pandas. So one thing is Pandas is not an inbuilt library. As I told you how to set up your environment for pip and Python in last session. So what you need to do is pretty simple. If you are not installed Pandas, so you can use pip install Pandas. So pip install Pandas will install Pandas for you. So if you have already installed, it will give you a command stating that it is already installed. So you need to open your CMD, type in the command pip install Pandas. You can look at the previous tutorial to understand how actually we enable this pip as well as our Python in our CMD. So those steps I have already discussed. So what we'll do is we'll import Pandas. So as I already told you that you don't need to type in Pandas every time, you can use an alias name. So what is an alias name that you can use? So whenever you are trying to use some program, whenever you are trying to use some external library, what you'll try to do is instead of typing the whole library name again and again, so we'll use a shortcut. So instead of typing Pandas every time, we'll use a keyword called as PD that you can use it each and every time for executing your programs as well as like playing with the library functions. So that is one thing. So this is how you can import an external library, first by pip installing it. then by importing the library. So this is what we did. So if your library is successfully installed, so if you try to run the code, then it should not give any error. So yes, so it is trying to run, so it is not giving any error, so it has executed successfully. That is how you can tell that you have executed the program properly. That is nothing but you have included the library successfully. So if you don't have a library included, so I'll take another library called TensorFlow that is used for deep learning based applications. So if I have not installed it, so it will give you an error stating that module not found error. Module not found error, no module named TensorFlow. So one thing you need to understand is whenever you get this error, so very important, if you don't get errors in your program, then you have not learned programming successfully. So every time when you program, you need to get a lot of errors which will make you understand why am I getting these errors. So no module not found error is simple. So you have not installed this module. So that is why there is no module called as TensorFlow. So it's same thing that will apply if I have not installed Pandas or any other libraries on Python. So very important to understand, if your library is not there, it will give you a module not found error. Then what you need to do, you need to pip install that library. Pip install that particular library to include those particular libraries inside your Python program. So this is done. Okay, so then we'll move on to the next step. That is pretty simple. So what is the next step that we'll try to understand is this. So we have our data called as names, which is nothing but a list. So what is list? It can store both same types and different types of data that is separately, so that it is storing. But the problem is I have a list called names. So I will enter my names, that is nothing but Peter, then Harry, okay, then Robert. So these are all my names. Okay, so these are all stored in a particular data type called as list. Okay. So then we have age. So age is nothing but another list which will have their ages respectively. So this is storing our particular data. But what if I want to combine these two different data? So what if I want to store the names and age of the people in a consecutive memory location or a single entity? So that is not possible in case of your regular Python. For example, if you want to print them, it will be two separate entities. So there is no relationship between your names and age. So they both are two different data types existing separately. But what if you want to store them in a place, or what if you want to store them in a type of data where you are actually creating a relationship between nothing but your two data. So you have your data nothing but your names. So if Peter's age was 21, if Harry's age was 22 and Robert's age was 34, there is no relation right now. So these two data types are not related and they are separate data types. Nowhere I can tell that Peter is associated with the age of 21 and Harry is associated with the age of 22 and Robert with 34. So to establish these kind of relationship between data, we need to have something called as a data frame. So what is a data frame is? It is nothing but your collection of different data to form a table. So whenever you have a table which is having different columns and different data, so this table is telling us there is some relationship between my first column and second column, so that data is related according to the row wise or column wise. So column wise would be my names. Row wise is nothing but the number of people that I have. So column wise I have names and age. Row wise it is individual data, individual name and age is happening in the row wise. Column wise it is storing your names and age. So that is how you can have a relationship that is established between two different kinds of data. So how do I establish this relationship is with the help of data frames. Okay. So how do I store data in data frames is pretty simple. So one type is nothing but, okay, if I want to store it in the form of a data frame, what I will do is I will create another data, that is nothing but I will create another variable called as data. So this data will store nothing but my relationship. So what relationship am I having? Peter is the name, age is 21. So that is one list. So it is nothing but a list of lists. So you have Peter and 21 as one list. So then you have Harry and you have your 22 as your second list. So then you have your data, that is Robert, and you have your nothing but your age as nothing but your 34. So this is what I did. So I created a list of lists. So you can put your names in capital, so that is also okay, fine. So no issue since it is a string, but to look more presentable, I can put these on caps. Okay, so done now. So what I will do right now is, since I have my nothing but a list of list. So even though I have a list of list, there is no relationship between the columns and the rows. So what I will do is, I can use my pandas library to initiate the data frame formation. So how do I create the data frame is nothing but you can use any variable name df. So that will be my data frame. You can use any other name. So pd.dataframe. D is capital and F is also capital. So that is the function that is available in pandas to create our own data frame. So this is how I create a data frame. So what is the advantage of creating a data frame is pretty simple. So there is relationship that is nothing but established between our different names and different ages. So what is that relationship, we'll see. But one more thing I need to add here. I need to add what is the column name. So because since data is not telling us what is the name of our columns and what is the name of our what should be the name of our columns. So that is very important. So I can write in columns. So these are all the inbuilt parameters. So inbuilt parameters is nothing but the columns. So where you can mention my first column is name and your second column is age. So this is one method how I can add names to my column. So now what I have done is I have used this data Peter 21, Harry 22, Robert 34 converted into data frame where my first column will be name and second column will be age. So I will print my data frame now. So yes, so we have successfully created a data frame. So in this data frame we are able to tell that our first column is nothing but our names, our second column is nothing but our age. So this is how we can establish a relationship between your different data that is stored as a separate entity to create a nothing but a relationship or an entity which is storing all this data in a single format. So if I wanted to do like any manipulation operation, if I wanted to store large amounts of data, I needed to return my individual variables. I need to return my separate names as a separate list, age as a separate list. But if I store it in the form of data frames, it is very easy. So I can access this particular row, I can access this particular column. So that is all possible with the help of our nothing but our data frame. So what is this 0, 1, 2? So these 0, 1, 2 are nothing but our index. So what is our index telling you here? So index is telling me that this starts with 0th index. So this is my first index. So this is our second index. So similarly, how you store your data in the form of rows and columns in the case of or data in the form of indices in case of strings, lists or tuples. So here also data can be stored in the form of your nothing but your indices. So indices starts from your 0, 1 and 2. So you can change your indices to whatever you want. You can change it to like strings or you can change it to numbers of your choice. So that is there. So what this index is telling you is how this particular row and row is named after. So this row is named after a particular number, that is 0. This row is also named after a particular number called as 1. So that is how we are able to create an entire data frame using our index. So in data frame we have our columns, we have our rows. So each and every row is named after our index. So index is telling us this is belonging to this number is associated with this particular row of data. So this is how you can form a data frame. So that is there. So what if I want to change my index? So the index is 0, 1, 2. So instead of 0, 1, 2, I want my other user defined index. So what I can do is I can create a list. So I can tell that don't put 0, 1, 2 as my default. I want A, B and C. So I can put my A, B and C as my index. So let us see what are the things that are changing. So you can see here in our program, so we have A, B and C being changed. So if I don't mention anything by default, it will take my 0, 1 and 2. But if I mention anything, that is nothing but if I mention my index, what are all my index values? So you can change this index value to whatever you want. So that is how you can start your, that is nothing but your data frame. So this data frame is one simple example of how to create your data frame. So next question is, so sir, I don't have rows and rows of data to form my data frame. I just have my single element, that is nothing but I have my single list. I want to form a data frame using that particular single list. So how do I do it is the next question. So no issue guys. So if you have just a single data type, so you don't have a list of lists or anything to form like a data frame or anything. So suppose I will have nothing but age. So let us consider this list called ages. So this list of ages, I will add some more random values of age. So this is my list of ages. So what I will do is, I want to create a data frame of this. So what is data frame of this is nothing but I have only one list. I want to create a data frame where each and every row is accessed with the help of nothing but your indices. So then you will have a column name to access the whole row of or whole column of data. So if I want to create a data frame using just my list, so it is pretty simple. So I will create another data frame called as df2. So pd dot data frame. So this is my command where I can create another data frame. So what data will we be taking now? We'll take the example of list called age. So that is there. But how many columns of data is there? Only one. So what is this? So we need to name it as our column name. So similar to our last case, so we'll name it as columns. Or sorry, age is a better example. So this is a better example. So what we'll try to do is, we'll try to print that particular thing. That is nothing but our data frame 2. So I will remove this or I will comment this. So one thing to comment in Python is nothing but you can use hash to comment. So if you want to comment any data in Python, you can use hash to comment it off, so that part won't be executed. So what I will do is I will try to print this particular thing. So I will print df2. So this df2 will print my data, that is nothing but my data frame 2, which will have my numbers. So printing this, okay, sorry, I didn't print it. Yeah, so now I am able to print my only list. So if you have a single list, so if you want to convert it into a data frame, so you can put that list and you can use that pd.dataframe to convert it into a list. So that is how you are able to convert that entire thing into a list. Or you are converting the list of elements to what? You are converting the list of elements to a data that is nothing but our data frame which is named after age. So again here you can, if you want to change the indices, you can change the indices, you can store different data. But this is an example where you can use your list to form your data frame. So that is one example. Okay, so that is one example. But what if I want to create nothing but our data frame using our dictionary? So I have a dictionary. So what I will do is I will have a dictionary called as dict1. So dict1 is my dictionary. So you know how to initialize a dictionary with curly braces. So what is the speciality of the dictionary? Data is stored in the form of key and value pairs. So if you have data stored in the form of key and value pairs, so what you can do is pretty simple. First you need to mention your key. So key is called as names. So what data can I store in names? All this data that I have here, that is nothing but the different names. I can store it here. So I will store these names here. Okay, done. So that is one thing, but I cannot store it as using comma as multiple strings. I need to store them within a list. So that is done. So next I have another key value pair that is nothing but my age. So I have my key value pair as age. So now values are nothing but my age data. So what are my age data? It is nothing but I can add any 3 ages, for example 12, 20, 34, 55. So this is my age data. So now I will close my dictionary. So this is an example of dictionary where I have my key, that is nothing but names, which is storing my value, that is nothing but my list. So then I have another key, that is age, and I am storing my values, that is nothing but my ages of different people, that is correlation between my names and age. So if I want to create a data frame using this, so how do I create the data frame? It is same. df3 is equal to pd.dataframe. So you're creating a data frame here. So after creating the data frame, you need to give the reference. So which is the data from which I need to create the data frame. It is dict1. So if you just give that, that is enough. So I don't need to give the columns also. Why shouldn't I give columns? So if I give columns, the main thing is whenever you have assigned the values in key value pair, by default this key value, that is nothing but my names and my age, will be taken as my nothing but my column name. So that is what is the default feature in case of your dictionary. So if you have a dictionary, you don't need to give these kind of column names to your dictionary to indicate whatever column names that you want to. But the thing is, by default it will be taken as names and age. So that is by default. So if you just try to run this code, okay, I'm not printing it anywhere, so it won't be reflected. I will comment out my previous print statement. So what I'll do is I'll print df3, that is nothing but my data frame 3. So if I want to print it, yes, so I'm able to successfully print it. So even though I'm not giving any column names here, by default the column names are taken as my key and keys of different data that I've stored in my dictionary. So what if I want to change my column name? So what if I want to change my column name? Simple. I can use columns that are here. So I can use it as people. So then I can use it as age of ages. So these two things I can change it here. So by default columns will be changed now. So then whatever column names I added, okay. So that will be appearing now. Yeah, so as we can see right now, though, we are not able to change our, that is names of our data frame back to the changes what we needed, because the thing is, wherever you give out your new name, so it is not able to change it. It is considering it as our new columns, not related to the columns of our data frame. So if you want to change the column names of your data frame, what you can do is, instead of choosing a different name, because we have our names and age, that is nothing but by default which are our keys. So these need to be as such, so you shouldn't change it, but you have another command that is available, that is nothing but your df.rename. So what you have is df3, that is our nothing but data frame. We are trying to renaming it with the columns, that is nothing but we are changing the names of the column of capital letter names to nothing but, okay, what will change it as? People. So we'll change it as people. So that is possible. So if you want to change only one column, so that is also there. So if you want to change only one column, so if you don't want to change another one, so that is also possible. So then you need to add something called as in place is equal to true. So what is this in place is equal to true doing is, it is replacing my names with people. So do you want to replace is nothing but true. So if you use in place is equal to true, it is replacing the name of column name, that is nothing but names, to people. So that is what it is doing, and we'll try to print out the data frame 3. So here you can see that the name has been successfully renamed to people and the age remains as it is. So if you want to change the age also, you can add another element, that is nothing but key value pair, that is nothing but a string of age, and then you will have nothing but your data, that is age, and you will have value. So what is the value, what you need to change it as is pretty simple. So what do you want to change the age is as nothing but, okay, I will use capital letter age EES, so something to change. Yeah, that is better. So then if I want to run, it will run. So that is the possibility. So in case if you are using dictionary where you have a key value and a pair, so by default the column names are like taken as your names and ages. So even if you don't mention this column name, by default it will take it as your names and ages. But the thing that you need to consider is, you can't change the column name by just typing in columns and changing it, because it won't consider that as your new columns or anything. So that is why it will give you an empty data frame. So if you want to change it in case of a dictionary, if you have created a data frame using dictionary where the column names are by default the keys, so how do you change it is nothing but using .rename option. So you need to create another dictionary which is telling what is your previous name, replacing it with another new name, Then you need to give a command called as in place is equal to true. What is in place? In place of my small letter names, I will need to replace it with people. So that is what is my entire code telling you. So that is how you need to replace your data. So that is one method of replacing data. So you understood how to create a data frame by using just a list, how to create a data frame by using a list of lists. So then how to create a data frame using a dictionary without giving your column name. By default it is taking your names of the keys as your column. So that is one method. But we'll try to understand some more things. Okay. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to drop some data. So we'll not confuse ourselves. So we'll reduce everything. So what we'll do is, okay, we'll just keep one dictionary for example. We'll remove this redundant data. So that is there. So we'll keep this one data frame. So we'll remove all other data frames. Okay. So this data frame we'll try to print and see what is happening. So while printing, we are able to see that it contains 3 rows with 2 columns. One column is telling you a name and the other column is telling you age. So whenever you have 3 columns that is there, so what you can do is pretty simple. So 3 columns, 1, 2 and 3, 2 columns and 3 rows are there. So what if I want to delete my first row? So what if I want to delete my first row? What I will do is pretty simple. So if I want to delete my first row, I will use a command. So let us remove the index. So we'll remove this index. So we'll keep regular indices. So if I want to remove my first command, so what I will do is I will use my pd.drop. So I will initialize it to my df only. So I will replace and store it in my df is equal to pd.drop. So pandas.drop, whichever column that you want to remove. So if you want to remove the 0th row, so what is the simple thing that you want to do? You need to drop the first thing, that is nothing but your 0th index. So 0th index is reference to your, okay, 0th, it is giving me slight error. So what is this error? We'll see. Yeah, the command is not pd.drop, it is df.drop. You need to tell which. See, basically what this is doing is this is selecting the data frame and dropping the first row of the data frame. So how the first row? So this row is dropped. So the thing that you need to understand is whenever you want to drop a particular row, so you need to select the index of that particular row and you can drop it. So if I want to remove my second index, I can remove it. So that is one possibility. So you can remove the whatever rows of that data that you want by using the particular drop. That is nothing but you need to select the data frame dot drop. You need to mention which particular row that you want to remove. So that is one option that you can. Yeah, one more thing we need to consider here is, so if I don't have my index as 0, 1, 2. So if you have your index, if you don't have this index chosen, or if you have your default index, you can see which is the 0th, first and second. But if you are changing it, your index to not a regular value but your own user defined value, what you need to do? So if you have your index that is changed into your own user defined value, so what you will do is pretty simple. You will just choose the index which you want to drop. So if I don't do this, I will just print it. Print my data frame right now. So if I want to print my data frame, it is printing A, B and C. So if I want to remove the second row, my index associated with second row is B. So I need to drop my B, that is nothing but my B index. So index can be anything. So it can be a string, it can be a character. So anything you want, you can keep it. So B was removed. So that is how you drop a particular row. But I have a doubt. That is nothing but I want to drop my, okay. Before dropping it, the next thing I want to do is, I want to access my particular column and row. So how to get only my particular row and column data. So to get that particular row and column data, so you need to know what is the name of the column first. So if you want column data, you need to know the column name. If you want row data, you need to know the index of the particular row. If I want to get the column data, so it is very simple, df name. So that is nothing but my column name. So I will use this column name. So if I want to get this only column data which is having my name, so I will use df within square brackets name will give my column data. Which column data? Only name column data it is trying to give. So if I want to get the column data of age, So age will give you my only age data, not my other column data. So that is how you get the column name. So if you want to access the columns, you need to use the names of the columns. So that is how we are trying to access the columns. So that is a simple example of how to access the columns in your data frames. So that is one simple example. But what if I want to access my row data? So what if I want to access my row data? It is very simple. So if you want to access your row data, there is a function called as df.lock. So df.lock will give you nothing but your individual row data. So if I want to access my row data using my index A, so this is what I need to do. So I need to use this df.lock A. So it is telling me that there is a error. So we'll see what is that error. Yeah, the main error is I shouldn't use curved braces. I need to use square braces. So because I'm telling you which index I want to access. So if I want to access the first row, if I want to get the data of first row, I can use this. So just print it. So it is giving me my first row, which is nothing but name is Peter and age is 21. That is what I am getting. So this is the important thing that we need to access or use here. So if you want to get any other data by knowing the index, so if you know what is the index, so you can get the data of particular rows. But we have another problem. So I am a newbie. I don't know what is my index, or I am another programmer who is trying to get some data, but I don't know what index is being given. But what I can do is I can count from the columns which data I want to access. So there is an option called as iLock. So you have your iLock where you don't need to give your index. So you need to give the column number. So column number is, index is nothing but a user given data that is not to your rows and columns. But here you can directly give in 0, 1, 2, 3, which is nothing but the default index which will be set by the program itself. So whenever I tell 0, it is nothing but Peter and 21. So though you have given your manual index A, B and C, so if you don't want it to access using this manual index, but if you want to access it using your regular 0, 1 and 2 numbers of rows, you can do this. So if I want to access my third row, I can use this 2 to indicate it is my third row. So it is telling me that it is Robert and 34. So this is exactly similar to your other statement, that is nothing but your df.lock. What is the index of your third row? C. So you need to use C to check your index here. So that is exactly similar to these two statements are exactly similar. But what is the difference? In lock, you need to give the index which you have defined. So if you are not defined index, then iLock and lock both are the same. So if I have not defined any index here, so lock and iLock both are same, because by default the index will be set as 0, 1, 2 itself. So this is how you can see both are same. But if I have given my index here, so here I need to mention what is the index that I have given in lock. But in case of iLock, I don't need to mention what is the index given. I can directly measure nothing but count the row data and directly enter which row of data I want to have. So this is how you can access a particular row of data. So this is how you can do it. Okay, so if you want to access multiple rows of data, for example, so if you want to access from 0, so if you want to access from 0 to second column, you can use this colon and 2. So what is this telling indirectly? It is starting from your 0 and ending at 2. So you can try this out. So basically it is giving me 0th index and first index till the second index. The index number 2 is not being considered, therefore it is just giving me 1. So what if I want to print everything? It is nothing but you can use this function from 0, or if you don't mention anything, that is also the same. So if you don't mention anything, it will take it from starting to the ending. So if you want to print it till first index, so it will print the same thing, that is your first data. If you want to print it till second index, it will print 2 data. So that is how. If you want to print it till your third index, so it is printing your entire thing. So that is how each and every column is being printed. So if you want to access multiple rows of data, you can use this column operation. This this colon is indicating that the range that you want. So if you want rows from 0 to 10, nothing but starting from 0 and ending at 10. So this is how you can access the different rows. But if you want rows starting from 5 till the end of your entire data frame, you can use 5 and colon. So this is how you can mention the you can see how you can get the data. Similar thing with lock. So that is also there. But in lock you can't use your nothing but your regular index, but you need to use your indices which you have given. So that is the thing about your lock operation. So LOC will use the index which is given to you. ILOC will use the default index, that is nothing but 0, 1, 2. Whatever index you have given, that doesn't matter. So if you have not used separate indices, so then lock and ilock both are same. So that is how you can access your data. So this is one of our beautiful steps where we can access our rows and columns. So that is there. Okay. So then what we'll try to do is we'll try to insert some data into our data frame. So we have already assigned a data frame here. So I want to insert it to my data frame. So I will use a regular index. So if I want to insert another thing, so if I want to insert some data, so what I will do is I will use this command called as df.insert. So df.insert will insert a data to my existing data frame. Which position I want to insert? So we'll insert it in my second position. So what is the thing that I want to insert is nothing but my okay. So this df.insert, what it is trying to do is it is trying to insert a particular column. So you have your existing column. So if you want to insert any particular column to your existing data, for example, so you have your column such as nothing but your you have your column that is your salary. So let us take a list called as salary. So salary is a list that will tell you how much of salary that each person is getting. So this is one salary, this is second salary, this is third salary. So if you want to insert this column to your existing data frame, so how would you insert? So I would like to put this in position number 2. So then what is the column name is nothing but my salary. Okay, so then what I want to insert my data that is nothing but my salary. So will I be successful in doing this? We'll try to print it and we'll see. So what is the thing that we'll need to understand here? So salary is not defined. So why do you think the name salary is not defined here? So because of the error that we have done here. So yeah. Now it has successfully done. So you have already inserted 2 columns, that is nothing but your names and age here. But if you want to add another column, so you have your names and age as one column, but you have your salary in different column, but that is not a part of your data frame. So if it is not part of your data frame, you need to mention at which position you want to put your salary column. So the problem is 0 and 1 I have put my age. So if you want to put it in the middle also, that is not a problem. So that the other one will move towards the side. So if I want to put it in the middle of name and age, so I can put it by using the one index, so which is telling me 0, first column should be my salary, the existing one will be pushed towards the right. So that is what has happened right now. So I can insert your new, that is nothing but your new columns here. So that is how you can insert your new columns here by using nothing but your df.insert. So if you are using df.insert, what you are trying to do is you are inserting new columns with the existing data frame. So that is what you can do with the help of your particular data frame. So what we'll try to do is another simple concept where we can try to append an existing data frame to the new data frame. Okay, so what we'll try to do is we'll remove this salary. So then we'll remove this insert thing. Okay, so now what I will do is I will create another data frame. So I will use this copy again. So yeah, I will use this data frame that is nothing but yeah, so I will use I'll create another data frame here. So name is Annie. Then we'll have Mike. So then we'll have Prince. So these are all the 3 names. So this is another data frame. So what I will do is I will try to save it in data frame 2. So I want to add this data frame into my old data frame. So I have my data frame df. So that is having two like columns, that is nothing but name and age. Here also I have another data frame having two columns, that is name and age. What if I wanted to add these two data frames? Nothing but I want to append all the data that is there in my data frame 1 to data frame 2. So what is this data frame by separate entities? So you can print out df and df2 to check what are these two different data frames. So this data frame is nothing but Peter, Harry, Robert. This is Annie, Mike and Prince. So these two are different data frames. So if I want to join these two, what I will do is pretty simple. So I have a command called as append. So to my first data frame, that is df, I want to append df.append another data frame. So which is the data frame I want to append? df2. So after doing this, my df will have the data of two things, that is my original data frame df as well as the data frame df2. So this two data frames got added using the df.append. So if you use append, you can add two data frames. So that is a simple thing that you can try out. So that is one of the simple things that you can try out using this data frame. So you can add two data frames, so that is possible. So if you want to delete any column or row, so if you want to delete it, I told you how to delete a row. So if you want to delete a column, it is pretty simple. So how do you delete a column here? So if you want to delete, you will use a keyword called as delete. Then you will use the data frame name, that is df. Then you will access the column names using your square braces. So I want to delete my ages. So if I want to delete my age, so delete df of age is nothing but deleting that particular column. So then if I print this data frame, what will get printed? Only my name, because I have deleted my column that is containing ages. So this is with the basic thing that we have tried to do. So in what we'll do next is nothing but we'll take in data, that is the data of our CSV files, and we'll try to play with those data. We'll try to import the CSV files and we'll try to play with the data there. Okay, now what we'll be doing is pretty simple. So we'll go and get some data sets that is available ready-made. So how do I get this data sets, or how to download the data sets and use them in your program is pretty simple. So I'll just teach you that. Okay, so I have come to this website called as www.kaggle.com. So kaggle.com is the place where you can find different data sets. So you can come to www.kaggle.com and you can search on Google about PIMA diabetes dataset. So what is this PIMA diabetes dataset is pretty simple. So this dataset consists of a lot of data that is belonging to people who are diabetic who have been tested in India. So National Institute of Diabetes is nothing but an institution where they get tested for diabetes. So the National Institute of Diabetes has created a data set for many people. So that data set contains a lot of factors. So what are these columns that are there in this data set? Is nothing but, okay, so we'll understand what is the data set, and then we'll try to come to a conclusion of what is happening. Okay, so basically what you need to do is download this PIMA Indian diabetes data set. How to download is nothing but you will have a download option here. So you can just click on it. So it will ask you to sign in. You can sign in using your credentials. So that is there. So you can sign in using your credentials and you can download the data set. So downloading the data set, how will the data set be? In the format of a CSV file. So now I have downloaded this particular data set. So this is in my CSV format. So once it is in the CSV format, you can just open it like a normal Excel sheet. So you can just click on this and you can open it like a normal Excel sheet. So this is how you get a data set in the Excel sheet. So see, basically CSV is nothing but a comma separated variable. So you can open it in any format that you want to. So you can open it either in the form of a data set or a database, or you can also open it in the form of Excel also. You can open it in the form of Notepad or Excel. So how to understand this data set is pretty simple. So this data set consists of what is the question that needs to be answered now. So this data set consists of different columns. So what are the columns, and we'll see how these columns are divided and we'll try to understand. So the first one is called as pregnancies. So what is pregnancies is nothing but how many pregnancies a person had in their lifetime. So that is what is pregnancies. So then we have glucose. So what is the glucose level content of each and every person? So the total amount of record is around 769 people. So the National Institute of Diabetes have collected the data for 769 people. So they have collected, so what are the data? Pregnancies, glucose, blood pressure, skin thickness, insulin, BMI. So what is the skin thickness? So skin thickness also is a measure of your diabetes, and blood pressure. So what is your blood pressure? BP, that is nothing but systolic or diastolic blood pressure that they have collected. So what is the insulin amount of your blood? So that has been collected. So then BMI. So BMI is nothing but your body mass index. So if it is greater than 25, you're an obese person. If it is less than 25, you're normal. So that is what is your BMI. So BMI is nothing but body mass index, which compares your height and weight and gives you an index. So diabetes pedigree function. So basically what you need to understand is diabetes is it is a ancestral disease, or what you call it as a hereditary disease. So when you call it a hereditary disease, so if people or if your relatives of your parents or grandparents have that particular disease, then you are also more prone to that disease. So that is what is your diabetic pedigree function. So more the value, the more the prone you are for getting the particular disease. So age. So what is the age that the particular person had? So then you have a column called as outcome. So what is this outcome telling you is nothing but how many people have diabetes or not. So if it is 1, then the person is diabetic. If the row is 0, it is nothing but the person is not diabetic. So this is the entire data set that we are going to work with, and yet we are going to implement it in our Python program. So what you can do is, once you download it, you can go back to your desktop. Okay, you can go back to your desktop. In your desktop, you can create a new folder. So you can create a new folder called as, so you can create this new folder. So I'll create this new folder as my data. So after this, I can go inside this. So here you can paste that particular data set. So you can copy this particular data set. Then you can go and paste it in that particular folder. So since I have created my folder, that is nothing but my folder called data. So I will paste my data set inside this. So one particular thing is your Python program or that is nothing but your CSV file must be in the same location. So if it is in the same location, you need not give directory of the particular file. If it is not in the same location, then you need to give this particular whole directory of the entire thing. So that is what is the thing that you need to do. So if your Python program and your CSV file are in the same place, then you need not, give the whole directory. If it is not there, then you need to give the whole directory. That is what you need to do. See, one simple thing is you can save it in the same place where your data is being stored. For example, I will save as in desktop where I have created a folder called data. So here I have my, that is nothing but, I have my CSV file also. So this is there. So what I can do is I can even save my program here so that I don't need to give the full location. Or if you want to give if you have it in some other place, you can give the full location. I will show you that also. So the first thing that we'll do is simple, that is we'll import pandas. So import pandas as PD. So that is there. So then to use that CSV file that we have downloaded, pretty simple. So here my two files are there. So that is nothing but my P, that is the Python, and here the diabetes.csv. So I can rename it as diabetes. Okay. So diabetes.csv and my Python file are in the same location. What we'll try to do is, we'll try to access that particular file. So how will I access it? Simple. So I will create a variable called as data. So data is my variable name. So what I will do is pd.read_csv. So pd.read_csv is my command. So this is my command. So what I will do is I will use the name of my CSV file. So this is my CSV file. So since it is there in the same folder, I need not mention my whole data path. So if it is not there in my same folder, what I need to do is I need to mention the whole data path. But while mentioning the data path, this forward slash cannot be used in Python. You need to use this reverse slash. So forward path slash is not allowed in Python. You need to use this reverse slash. So then you can mention this whole, that is nothing but your whole directory. So one thing is, if your Python file and your CSV file are in the same location, then you need not put this thing. So if it is not there in the same location, you can put the entire directory. So even though it is in the, even though if it is not in the same location, or if it is there in the same location also, what you can do is you can put this directory. So no issues. But if it is there in the same directory, it is not a compulsion to put it. So if it is in other directory, it is 100% compulsion to put it there. So that is the two things that you need to consider. Okay, so now we have just read this pd.read_csv. What this is doing is reading our diabetes.csv, that is this file. Then it is what it is storing all those data in a variable called as data. So this is done. So then if I want to print that particular data, okay, so if I want to print that particular data, so let us see what we'll get. So after printing, we got this pregnancy, glucose, and we are getting these dots. So why we are getting these dots is, since so much data is available, it is like how you like do it in case of your while writing some words or something. It is like a continuation thing that is happening, and it is showing that these are all the data that is present. So total is around 768 rows are there, or 9 columns of data is there. So that is how you import a CSV file onto your nothing but your Python program. It is very simple. PD, that is nothing but pandas.read_csv is the command. So once you do that pandas.read_csv and you give your whole, that is nothing but your data format, that is nothing but your directory / your file name.csv, then it works. So this is how you are reading that whole thing in your CSV, reading data from your CSV file. But we want to see what is the data type of that particular data that we are storing. So how will you check the type of a data? It is nothing but using a type keyword. Okay. So what it is done is, it is a pandas data frame. So one thing to understand here is, it is a pandas data frame. So what do you mean by pandas data frame? So how I told you how we created the data frame earlier, guys. If we create the data frame earlier, it would be like pd.data dcaps data frame. So this is how I create a data frame from normal data. So if I have a list, I can create my data frame using this. So that is there. So this is how I create my data frame. Okay. So this is how I create my data frame. Then if I want to print my data frame, it is nothing but print text. So that is what I would do to create my data frame. So this is a manual method of creation of data frame. But now what I have done is, I have read my CSV file. So once I read my CSV file, automatically all the data in my CSV file, that is your column and row data, will be converted into a data frame. So what is there in the data frame? We have individual columns and individual rows that are stored in the form of the data frame. So what did we print here? It is nothing but a pandas data frame that we printed here. So whenever we print some data, so this is the whole data frame that we printed. So simple things we'll try to do. We'll try to access our columns. So what are all the columns there in our CSV? Pregnancy is one column, insulin and BMI. So we'll just check for insulin. So how do I access my first the column of insulin? I need to type the name of the column. So insulin is my column name. So if I want to print that whole column, so this is my whole insulin column. So 768 is the length. Okay, this is how I can access my insulin column. So then coming back, if I want to access my age column. So how will I access my age column? So I would write in age. So that is how I would access my age column also. So that is how we are accessing the columns. So then if I want to access my first row, how would I access? .ilog for accessing your column. So if I want to access my first column or third column basically. So this is my third column, having pregnancy is 1.0, glucose is 89 and all those parameters, and the outcome is 0. So this is how you can access different columns. So if I want to access columns from 3 to 300. So this is a column that is starting from 3 and ending at 299, because the last letter 300 is not, index is not included. So this is how you can access different number of rows and columns in your data. So very beautiful thing in your Python, that is, you are reading your CSV file and you are trying to access different data. So that is there. So next question is pretty simple. We'll try to make some understanding out of this data. So since we know that we have so much of data, we'll see one particular thing that we have to learn about artificial intelligence is we need to even analyze data sometimes. So this data is such a raw data or a huge collection of data. I can't make any sense out of this entire data. Okay, so what I will do is I will try to get some insight out of this entire data. So what is the insight that I can get from my whole data is I will try to access each and every column. So I will see what are all the data that is available, and I will go through this entire thing with the help of for loop. Okay, so how can I make use of this CSV data? That I will teach you in a simple way. This is a very crude method. So what I will do is I will put a count variable as 0. So now I will put a for loop for I in data of. So what we'll choose is we'll choose one column. We'll see which column? We'll see the BMI column. Okay. We'll see how many people are obese and how many people are not obese. Oh, this is the BMI column. Okay. So if I want to do something in BMI column, so I will use data of BMI. That will give me the entire BMI column. So what is for I in data of BMI? It is telling me for each and every individual data in my total BMI. So it will iterate each and every small data, that is starting from my 33.62, and each and every iteration it will take in that into consideration. So after doing it, what I will do is some little bit of common sense is needed. So what is the common sense? We should know that if the BMI is greater than 25, so we can call that person as obese. So we need to have some subject knowledge also. So if I is greater than 25, that is nothing but each and every BMI value I am checking. So what I will do is I will increase my count value. So I have increased my count value. So that will count my it will keep on counting. So what I will do is I will see how many people are obese. So print count will tell me how many people are obese. Then I will tell that so I will print how many people have are like having BMI value greater than 25. So number of people who are obese. So this is what I will do. So then I will print. So out of 770 or 768 people, 645 people are obese. So what is this indicating? Obesity is also a major factor that would lead to that is a major factor that would lead to your diabetics. So that is one of the reasons. So that is how you can do it. Okay. So then what I will do is, okay, we will do a beautiful thing. So what we will try to do is we will see for each and every data, that is nothing but, okay. So for each and every data, what we will do is we will check for the number of people who are actually having diabetes in this entire thing. So that is nothing but my outcome column. So what is my outcome column? So I will name it as outcome. So to access that column, so again, number of people who have diabetes, who are diabetic. So I will count the number of people who are diabetic, but I is not equal to 1, but I is double equal to 1. Why? Because people who are diabetic are given, that is nothing but the data set has 1, so that is telling that people are diabetic. If the data set outcome value is 0, then the people are not diabetic. So I will try to find out how many people are diabetic in this entire data set. So 268 people are diabetic in this entire whole data. So I can even add double condition. So what is the double condition that I can try to add is, so for I in data outcome, so if I is double equal to 1, so that is nothing but people who are diabetic. So what I need to do now is, okay, so what I need to do now is, again I can add an for loop and test for. So we can add some furthermore loops to get more and more logic. So that is about reading data from CSVs and getting some data. So what we can certainly do now is pretty simple. So we came about with this step. So the other things that we can try to do is, if you want to get more and more columns that can be stored in a single data. So what I want to do is, I don't want my entire, that is all these things as my input, but I want to store only few things as my input parameter. So what are the few things that I want to store is, I want to store this glucose and insulin level as a particular data frame. So what I will do is, there are two methods of doing this. So first method is nothing but I will create a list called as my list. So this my list will store my column names. What are the columns names that I need? Glucose. And I need my column name, that is nothing but insulin. So these two things that I want to store it in a separate data or in a separate place. I'm storing it here separately. So these two things I'm storing it here separately. Now what I will try to do is pretty simple. So I want to print out, that is nothing but, I want to add it to my other data. So data 2 is my another data. So that is nothing but my empty variable. It is nothing but my data of my list. So what is data of my list? It is nothing but my two columns, that is glucose and insulin. So these will be stored in my data 2. If I print my data 2, so it will have only two columns, that is glucose and insulin. So this is a simple thing that you can do. So if you are getting confused, so you don't need to use this list also. What you can do is whatever columns you want, you can store it inside a form of list. So this glucose, if you want to have the column, so only glucose column should be there. So I can use this glucose. So only glucose will be there. So if you want to have series of them, for example, glucose and BMI. So if you want to have two columns stored in one data frame, so two columns are getting stored in one data frame. So that is there. So if you want to use this, so this is also possible. So you can access multiple data frames in a single row. So that is possible with the help of this. So the data 2 can also be accessed, but there is another method of accessing your columns or rows. So how do you access your columns or rows is pretty simple. So I will use another method to access. So what I will do is I will use my ilog function. For example, so I have my ilog function. So this is my ilog function. So if I want to access I don't know my column name. So that is my one particular problem right now. So I don't know my column name, but I know the indices which I want. So what I can do is I can access my first column. So what is my first column? Pregnancies is my first column. So if I want to access my first column, so I can directly use this 0. So this is telling me that I am accessing my first column. See, basically what you need to understand is this ilog function is used for accessing your rows. Okay. So if you want to access your 0th row, you can use 0 and you can get the data of your 0th row. Okay. So if you want to try to print that data, so it is nothing but your data 1 is getting the 0th row, that is nothing but the first row of your entire data. So what is your first row of your entire data? So this is your first row of your entire data. But what I am trying to do is I am not trying to store my rows now. I want to get columns out of this. So whenever I use this, it is nothing but print. Whenever I don't mention anything, so it will get all my rows in columns. That is nothing but 768 rows in columns. So in that rows in columns, so what I want to do is I want to select my column now. So then another way of selecting column is using colon, put a comma, and inside the list you need to give the column number. So if you want to access your 0th column, so what is your 0th column? That is pregnancies. It is like this. So how to do it? This is telling me select all rows and all columns. If I'm not mentioning anything, it is the full dimension. That is nothing but my full data. But if I'm mentioning this as a list, so that is nothing but my column number. So if I want 0, 1 and 2. So if I want these three columns, 0th index column, first column and second column. So I will call this. So I am getting 0th, first and second. So that is how you can call columns in your particular data.ilog. But basically data.ilog is used for your fetching your rows of data. So that is what your data.ilog is doing. But you can also fetch column also by using a comma and storing whatever data that you want in columns. But the major problem is you need to know the index of the columns. But in other places you need to know the names of the columns. So, but the storing names of columns is difficult because I have my lowercase letter, uppercase letter. But accessing using it, nothing but my index value is much easier. So that is why you need that particular column also. So sometimes what happens is I want to choose just the outcome. So it is nothing but I don't want all these things. I just want my, I just want nothing but my last data. So what I will do is, I can see if I want to omit something, that is nothing but except my last data. So if I want to select anything, I can use this option called as : -1. So what it does is, so it is : -1 will take everything. So if I don't want that particular thing, what I can do is if I use : -1, so it is just taking in my last column. So that is also possible. Sometimes what we do need is, we need just the last column, we don't need all these things. So what we'll do is, we'll use this : -1. So what this will do is, it is nothing but leave all these columns and will take my only -1 column. So what is -1? Coming from backward. So when you take the first column from the backward position, it is nothing but -1. So this is how your entire data manipulation operation goes. So you can take in hundreds of CSV files, you can read the columns, you can read the rows, you can store them, and you can access individual columns and rows and get meaningful data out of this entire thing. So this is the simple like an introduction of the basic tutorial on Pandas libraries. So further on we'll be learning more about Matplotlib and other libraries. So this was the end of sessions with Pandas library. So your assignment is nothing but try to read different CSV files, put if loops, for loops, and understand how the data is getting manipulated, and try to understand the data set. What are the numbers? How can I make meaningful expressions out of this? So each and everything you need to understand using this particular thing. So you can use your loops and conditional statements to get better data or analytics out of this. So this is about the small introduction to your Pandas library. So thank you guys.